Good evening, everyone. This is İskit, and you are watching What's New, What's News. As all eyes on Palestine now, we have new developments happened through ICJ and ICC. As all you know, that ICC prosecutor requested from the court that Netanyahu and also Hamas leader Haniyeh to get a arrest warrant. So we will discuss this and also the debates surrounding in Turkey and also in Germany, which angles that they debate normally, what should have been done since October 7, and what hasn't been done through the countries, even though they are willing to involved in this South African case. Nobody has any kind of signs. We will definitely discuss this subject with international law expert from Koç University, the assistant Prof. Kerem Gülay, and also from Germany. We will talk with Professor Dr. Manuel Brunner, who is a constitutional and human rights expert. Let me invite them. This is going to be a good debate. Welcome, Mr. Brunner and Mr. Gülay. Thanks for joining me. How are you?
Okay, thank you. Fine.
Yeah, fine, of course.
Yes. Well, as we discussed recently with Mr. Gülay before, that what was the Turkey stance and how possibly they will get involved for this interrogation, how will the process will run. But a new development just happened, and now ICC prosecutor requested that Netanyahu and also Haniyeh to be arrested, actually. So I want to hear more. What is new? What is the new development through this case? Let me first give the word to Mr. Gülay, and then you can take as well, Mr. Brunner.
Sure. Thank you. So on the ICC front, there are the prosecutor requested arrest warrant for 5 individuals, 3 from Hamas and 2 from Israeli government. I mean, to begin with, this is an interesting request because there are certain elements. Specifically, for example, the prosecutor had relied on the notion of other inhumane acts. So this is there is a principle called numerus clausus, which means crimes have to be under the principle of legality. Crimes are limited to those in the statute. However, this other inhumane acts is a flexible mechanism, and the way in which the prosecutor uses it with respect to Hamas leaders and with respect to Israeli leaders is that I believe this is an interpretation that the prosecutor is going for an interesting jurisprudential approach to extend the scope of other inhumane acts for in the context of captivity. So he will focus on hostage taking, which is also a war crime, but he's trying both war crimes and hostage taking as a crime against humanity of other inhumane acts. And so this is the first interesting element with respect to prosecutor's approach to Hamas. And with respect to his approach to Israeli leaders, I think he's going to focus on starvation first as a war crime, then starvation as an other inhumane act. So same, let's say generally blanket clause for in the context of crimes against humanity. And I think the way in which this is worded implies that the prosecutor can go for starvation, can go for the right to water, so the cutting of water, plus maybe the cutting of electricity as it pertains to the situation with hospitals. So this is going to be a case about, my take is that, about the mass policy aspect rather than focusing on individual distractions. Of course, those are also in the request, but more on that later.
How about you, Mr. Brunner? How do you evaluate this case, especially from the German perspective? Because there are a lot of controversial now how Germany stands with the war, especially, and also how they approach for this ICC and also ICJ case.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk. This will take ages, and Kerem Gülay will agree that there is in the German public and political debate there are some major flaws. So when the ICC prosecutor Khan announced that he requested those arrest warrants against, on the one hand, the three Palestinian leaders, the three Hamas leaders on the one hand, and on the other hand, against Prime Minister Netanyahu and against Minister of Defense Gallant, Germany was an outrage. And this is because, I would coin it, Germany has kind of a communications dilemma internally and externally when it comes to the conflict in Gaza. On the one hand, Germany, for historical reasons, of course, the Shoah, the Holocaust against the Jews in Europe in during the Second World War, and the prosecution that happened against Jewish people in a disgusting manner also before the Second World War, is of course something that rests on the German soul, and not only on the population and on the politics, and it should be, because this was a major horrific act. This leads then to a strong stance with Israel, for this very reason. On the other hand, of course, Germany tries to champion human rights, to be a torchbearer of human rights, and always be on the forefront of human rights protection. Part of human rights protection is, of course, also the prosecution of those who violate human rights. And Germany was one of the main players when it came to the establishment of the International Criminal Court. Germany is the second largest giver of money to the International Criminal Court. I think the most money is given by Japan, Kerem, if I'm correct. True. I think it is Japan. And in Germany is second. So we have in this situation, Germany is in this very, very tense situation, in this communications dilemma, because on the one hand you have a close ally with this historical implication on the one hand, but on the other hand you always want to be the champion of human rights, and you always say you want justice for the victims of human rights violations. And this is problematic in the German public and political debate. We saw immediately after prosecutor Khan gave his speech on that he had requested those arrest warrants. We had reactions in the German social media arena. I remember one parliamentarian. She is from the Social Democratic Party. She posted this. She posted an article about this, and then she basically, the headline was a paraphrasation of that. Yeah, of that Khan has requested those arrest warrants. And then the reaction on X was basically, she would say that, and from other politicians, from other parties, the reaction was she would equalize the crimes of Hamas to Israeli actions in Gaza. So this is much part of the debate in Germany, and then of course there's other politicians from other parties said she should step down, but he basically reiterated the fact, nothing more. So this is basically a huge part of the debate now in Germany concerning the requests for the arrest warrants, that there is somehow an equal that the prosecutor equalizes the events of 7th October last year with the things IDF is doing in Gaza. I can only say this is a perception that sits a little ill with me, because it is not for a court to establish moral hierarchies. But this seems that many people are of the belief in Germany, even lawyers, even politicians, that the international court and the prosecutor must establish somehow hierarchies in the crimes he wants to prosecute on a moral basis. But this is not what a criminal court normally is doing. Yeah, I think in no legal system, a court is establishing moral hierarchies. This is something for the politicians to do and for society to do, but not for a court to do, and also not for a prosecutor to do. Before I continue, because I could continue a very long time, Kerem, what are your thoughts on that, please?
I mean, but basically, I can say the only difference between me and Manuel on this issue is that he calls it X, I call it Twitter still.
Yeah.
No difference. But I can perhaps echo the same problem in the Turkish discourse, because what Manuel identifies in the German public debate, but it's not just in Germany, it's also Slovakia, I think Czech Republic too.
Yeah.
So sort of portrayed this as if this is an issue of moral high grounds or sort of hierarchies, or perhaps creating an equivalence between a terrorist organization or a state. That's not what the law does. The law simply applies equally to everyone, and regardless of your status, you can be a terrorist, you can be a head of state, but if you commit international crimes, you are accountable. That's it. Full stop. The problem we have in Turkey is that when prosecutor decided to include 3 Hamas leaders in this arrest warrant, there were some people who didn't clearly, very openly said they are unhappy with it, but you could see in their criticisms that they were very unhappy with it, because people do still discuss this not as one of the gravest humanitarian crises there is, but as if this is an issue of sort of teams, or as if this is an issue of Islam versus Judaism, or Christianity versus Islam, or whatever. This is and this is approaching this as an issue of Islamic solidarity is the primary mistake that many countries with significant Muslim populations, including Turkey, does. This is not an Islamic solidarity issue. Recognizing Palestine might be, but the possible commission of international crimes is an entirely different ballgame. And what Manuel, wonderfully describes in such a short fashion, that the core tension in Germany is between the protection of human rights, which Germany championed for 70 years, and then the protection of the Jewish people of Israel because of Germany's historical sort of responsibility, perhaps. Those are in tension. But in fact, the latter might have. This is a paradox, because which one came first? But in fact, if Germany or any other country, this is not specifically Germany, is to champion human rights, then it might actually need to distance itself from one of the closest allies, or if it is going for the closest ally, then it might actually distance itself from the championing of human rights. So this creates all these tensions, but for Germany and for many states. Same problems happen in Turkey, as I try to explain. I mean, we can talk about this. What I think both Manuel and myself do fail to understand is how lawyers can still be captured in this non-legal debate.
Yes.
Because we do obviously have political sort of ideas, but this is not about politics anymore.
This is humanitarian, isn't it? Isn't like it's just in how many months now? 8 months since it started, and more than now 36,000 people died over there. So this is kind of a humanitarian problem rather than evaluating in politics. This is my point of view as well. And I would like to ask you another question coming from this angle, actually. What will happen next now? How the process will go, especially with the ICC and ICJ? Because now, yes, they made a clear stance what's happening in Palestine. But on the other hand, what will happen to Netanyahu or Haniyeh? Will there be any kind of arrest if this come to a conclusion? Because I think this is the part where people confuse, because either this ICC is a symbolic court, or is there any kind of how do you say sentence to be convicted to the Netanyahu or Haniyeh or those leaders? You think how this process will work?
I mean, it is now, the ball is now in the field of the pre-trial chamber, and the pre-trial chamber of the ICC. This is basically the first chamber that decides something. They need to decide upon the arrest warrant. Of course, there is a discrepancy between the entity known as the State of Palestine and Israel. As an entity known as the State of Palestine is a state member to the ICC statute, and they would be under obligation to arrest the three Hamas leaders immediately, while Israel is not. However, those member states, the member states of the ICC, they are would be under obligation, and if the arrest warrant is issued, to arrest Netanyahu or Gallant if they step onto their territory. Germany, the communication of the German government is very, because of the aforementioned catch-22 situation, is very, very careful on that. There is an articulation by the German government that might be interpreted as yes, we would arrest Netanyahu or Gallant if they come to Germany. Yeah. Could be interpreted, but the wording is very, very, very careful. Very careful. Very carefully worded.
How about Turkey then?
I mean, as you know, Turkey is not a state party to the Rome Statute. However, I think I advanced this view perhaps with you before, Ceren, or perhaps elsewhere. I'm not used to this, so my mind is foggy. But I believe there is an obligation for Turkey to extradite anyone against whom there is an arrest warrant by the ICC, if ICC state parties to the ICC who are legally bound towards the ICC to execute the arrest warrant file a request to Turkey, and that individuals are based located in Turkey at that moment, and that there is an extradition treaty or a treaty with extradition provision between Turkey and that state. So in simple terms, if, for example, some Hamas, so one of these three individuals, Sinvar al-Masri and Haniyeh, are in Turkey, And if, say, for example, Turkey and Belgium or Turkey and Netherlands have a extradition treaty, which Turkey does, then those states can request Turkey to arrest them, Haniye, for example, and return to Turkey. This will create interesting problems for Turkey because, under Turkish constitution, there is an obligation not to extradite, but then there are international obligations. So, and non-compliance with international law cannot be justified by your domestic law, even at a high level. So there will be an interesting case. And Turkey is, in fact, in the last couple of years specifically, Turkey is pushing for extradition of so many people, pushing PKK members, suspected PKK members, DHKPC members, FETÖ members, pushing for their extradition from these countries to Turkey. So that means if Turkey acts on principle, Turkey should comply with such a potential extradition request. Again, there are a lot of ifs. So if ICC pretrial chamber issues the arrest warrant, if one of these countries requests from Turkey, and if that individual is based in Turkey, located in Turkey. So, but and this is not impossible, this is likely. So if these conditions are fulfilled and Turkey, there is a request from Turkey, if Turkey acts on principle, it should extradite. In the worst case scenario, even if Turkey is not acting on principle, Turkey will be using this as a bargaining chip and will say, look, I'm going to hand in you Haniye. I don't want anything to do with this Hamas guy, but you will give me 5 suspected PKK members, and everybody will be willing to admit that, I think. Or Turkey can use this. Turkey can use this because, please be aware of this situation. This is very fragile. Who does Turkey want most to be extradited? Someone in Pennsylvania. So, and of course, U.S. is not very sort of willing to go for Netanyahu and Gallant and sort of vehemently oppose their sort of the arrest warrant against them. But U.S. will be very willing to do that for Haniye, for example. So Turkey can use Haniye as a bargaining chip to ask U.S. So there can be a 3-party deal, a backroom channel. So if we have a smart diplomacy, that can be a great tool for Turkish Foreign Office. Plus, we will be complying with our legal obligations. So even stressful situations can offer opportunities, I think.
So talking about,
there is a rumor of that Pennsylvania leader actually was on the way to Turkey on a plane. That this is a rumor, but the officials said no, this is not right information. But we will see on the coming days. I think something interesting happening in Turkey as well. But this is another issue. You were supposed to say something, Mr. Brunner.
Yeah, talking about principle, there again, Germany is again in a very delicate spot when it comes to those principles. Of course, if one of the 3 or more of the 3 Hamas leaders are coming to Germany, of course, they would be arrested like instantly. Of course, yeah, this is sure. But talking about Netanyahu and Gallant, Germany is again in a very, very precarious position, because our Minister of Justice, Buschmann, when the arrest warrant by the ICC against Vladimir Putin was put out, he instantly declared, yes, if Putin sets his foot on German soil, we will arrest him. Instantly. It was instantly declared, yes, if Vladimir Putin would at some day in the future come to Germany, there would be an instant arrest. Yeah, and here again we see this very delicate situation Germany finds itself in, because then if you are saying you want to act on principle if there would be an arrest warrant issued against one of those, one or both of the Israeli politicians. You must, like, from a principle point, for this differently. Sorry, this Putin point sets the reference. Yeah, and now you should then, if you want to act on principle, you must apply the same principle. But of course, and then this leads us a little bit back, if I may take that route. This leads us back to the discussions in Germany, because the discussion in Germany is very heavy upon that, with Netanyahu and Galland, that both have come into office by a constitutional democratic process of some sort under Israeli constitutional law. And many politicians and even some lawyers in Germany try to think, for what reason ever, that this would play a role in both the granting of the arrest warrant and also in the execution of the arrest warrant, that someone came into office by way of a democratically legitimate process. And this is, of course, also not, and Kerem already said this very briefly in what he said before, that it is not about how you get into the position that you are. The focus of a criminal investigation is not who you are normally, but what crime you may have committed. And this is also something, and here the circle goes full turn, because we had politicians, the leader of the Christian Democratic Party, he claimed the ICC is for the warlords and the despots. And this is, of course, not true. There is no rule in the ICC statute that say you can only be tried if you would be a warlord or a despot or a terrorist or whatever. It is, again, about the crimes. This is something, again, what I think sits ill with many people from the Global South. Because this is again this language. So we are the West. We can do nothing wrong. It is for some backward African countries. Yeah, of course, there the ICC is for, but not for us. And this is, of course, from a Global South perspective. Of course, I'm not from the Global South, but I recently attended a conference in the Global South, and I spoke with colleagues there. And this is something that sits ill with people in the Global South. That basically the West is trying to bind the Global South countries and the people in the Global South to rules, which the West knows. Yeah. They might not work. They might not be applied to us. But as soon as they are applied to us, there's this very defensive language. So which has no basis actually in the law. And this is then again about double standards.
That's true.
May I add something?
Sure.
There is a mythological creature called a chimera. It is. It has 3 heads. I think 1 dragon / snake, 1 goat, and a lion. So the story goes that the chimera turns against the master and then turns against everyone. I think it's we should be smart to. I mean, this analogy has been I'm sure it has been made by someone. I remember reading an article with chimera. Lawyers, international lawyers, like interesting analogies. But I think we should think of international law as the chimera, which was created to regulate, which perhaps self-created to regulate state behavior, and then it was so readily endorsed and promoted as reflecting a set of values by the West. By the way, I generally prefer West versus East or West versus Rest rather than global North or South. But it's not the same, but it's very similar with what Manuel said. But this is actually this is becoming very unconvincing for everyone else, because it's not just Germany or German politicians. The Americans made the same thing. There was another news. I think Kerim Han, the prosecutor, said personally to Christiane Amanpour that some senior American politician told him that the ICC is there. The ICC is not there for the Western leaders. It's there for the African warlord. And this was a criticism made over and over by the African nations. And the response from the ICC to the African nations was, and I heard this firsthand from the former president of the ICC, that, look, you became part of this court, you refer these cases to us, or the Security Council did. So we are just doing the task that you entrusted us with. This is perfectly legitimate argument. So if the ICC doesn't do that now, just because some Christian Democrat politician or some American Republican said, then it will actually destroy its legitimacy. And that's why I believe ICC won't go to that route. And the Assembly of State Parties confirmed the independence of the court in a recent resolution. It was stated by the presidency. So this is the international institutions. They are not as strong as we perceive them to be, but they are reacting to this nonsense. And also, it's people like Manuel and many others. I mean, there is a very famous German author called Stefan Thalmann, and I occasionally am very critical about his views, but he's also echoing the criticisms that Manuel is echoing. This is most of the stuff in the public debate has nothing to do with the law. It's just people having opinions. And if the same people will raise the same opinions, say in rocket science or computer science or biology, everyone will call them ignorant. But when it comes to law, and somehow it's just international institutions are not working, or this is all a conspiracy. It doesn't work that way. This is a field of expertise. Things work slowly. Do not expect international lawyers to create miracles. We are not magical creatures, although Manuel might be, because he's writing, I don't know, 5 articles at the same time. I can only do 2, but it's and we have a co-authored piece that we are starting about. We promised each other we are starting next week, since I don't know, beginning of the year. But seriously, things will work slowly, and people perhaps should stay idle for a bit, try to understand what's going on, and then express views about international law. As I said numerous times, also with you, Ceren.
Yes.
International law isn't all. Well, it creates a structure, but it cannot prevent everything in an imperfect world. International law can hold states and individuals accountable, but it's a process. It takes time. When you don't expect everything from the law, when the politics has failed us so miserably, and the fact that a rule has been violated doesn't actually mean that the rule doesn't exist. By focusing on the reaction to the violation, the existence of the rule is confirmed. Look at the entire world. Everyone is denouncing the crimes and then saying international law doesn't exist. Our very basic criticism against the actions of Israeli government or Hamas is based on the fact that they are objectively unlawful. So the fact that the enforcement mechanism, and one final thing, people commit murder all the time everywhere around the world, and no one is claiming that the legal system failed because someone commits murder. You just call that person a criminal and put that person in jail. And this is precisely what the ICC is trying to do, which people should actually respect.
There is also, which I would also comment on what Kerem just said, there's also one more advanced version of talking bullshit about international law and talking about international law, especially in this particular situation, in this particular case. talking about the law without actually talking about the law, and this is trying to re-narrate the law. This is a more advanced version of trying to delegitimize international institutions and what their actions are. In the International Criminal Court, and under Article 17, there is the principle of complementarity. Basically, people tend to believe that the International Criminal Court is a solution, like, you know, for all criminal crimes, for all international crimes, but this is not true. The basic idea, I mean, this principle as such is very complicated, and I cannot discuss it, and also Kerem cannot discuss it in full detail now in this also. But the idea basically is that the member states should first prosecute and trial those who are implicated with those crimes in the ICC statute themselves, and only when this does not work for one reason or the other, then the ICC comes into play. So this is shortly this principle of complementarity without all the nitty-gritty stuff. Some people in Germany, and I also believe in other countries, tried with regard to Netanyahu and Gallant, tried this re-narration of what that how the complementarity principle basically works. And they said, yeah, Israel has a functioning judicial system. And this is enough, that there is a functioning judicial system is enough basically that there is a guarantee that they will prosecute it. But this is actually not the standard of Article 17 of the ICC statute. It is not about that a state in general, and this is a re-narration, yeah? The re-narration is basically a state has, and that's again Western states, yeah, they have a functioning judicial system, and therefore ICC statute would not be applicable, yeah, or a case would be inapplicable because of that. But that is not true. It is not primarily about having a functional judicial system. This also plays a role in the Article 17, but this is not the main point. The main point is, are there criminal investigations into a specific conduct of a specific person of a specific crime? This is the standard. It is not a general standard that states with whatsoever a working judicial system are exempted from the ICC's jurisdiction. This is not how it works. International lawyer John Heller has written a long piece about this, which was very good. And those viewers who are interested in international law, they should Google this, because this is very, very detailed upon that particular issue. But here you can see that people are even trying from the global north, from the global north, try to re-narrate in the public mind what the law actually is. And to do this, they have to have a look in it, somehow a look in it. And this is also a worrying trend, because the ICC statute is this very long for an international treaty. It is very detailed and it's very complex. I think Kerem and I we agree on that. That is not the most easy treaty to get through, and they are trying. And those people are basically trying to re-narrate in public mind what the statute is actually about. They're talking about very, very complicated concept, complicated in wording, complicated in application. So if you will, in theory and practice, very complicated. And they try to narrate it a little bit in, yeah, but it's general. There's general rule. If you have your working judicial system, a working criminal judicial system, then it's no problem. Then the ICC statute cannot harm people from our state or from allied states. Yeah. And it's also, I personally and also lawyers, also again in Germany, even lawyers fell into the trap. I don't know why. I mean, this is a worrying trend. This worries me. As a lawyer, this worries me when lawyers are falling into that trap.
So,
well, similarities in Turkey as well, I think, isn't it, Mr. Gülay?
I mean, our debate is not as sophisticated as the German debate because simply there aren't many ICL experts. I can, back in here, there are Turkish criminal law experts who claim expertise in ICL, which is a different issue. Having said that, the Kevin John Heller's Kevin's piece article is actually a really great sort of introduction to this complex debate. He's even posting on Twitter about this debate in English. So, he's one of the most important authorities on the matter, by the way. And I believe he has a position as one of the consultants of the OTP, of Keriman, of the prosecution.
Yep.
And simply the argument is, I'm just oversimplifying it as we have to. It's a very complex, nuanced, logical debate. Even if there is a properly functioning judicial system, I mean, if the state is unwilling to prosecute potential international crimes, the ICC can prosecute. So the only way for Israel or for the defense of Netanyahu and Gallant to stop this is if Israel genuinely conducts an investigation and prosecution of the potential crimes. Then the ICC should step out. So this is as simple as that. And this goes for Palestine too. If the Palestinian Authority reasserts its authority in Gaza Strip after, hopefully the end of this conflict, then if the Palestinian Authority prosecutes Hamas leadership, then the ICC should step out.
Yeah.
The principle at the ICC is national prosecution. People shouldn't expect this court to look for thousands of cases. I actually have numbers. I have a sort of recent article on the ICC. It will be published next week or something in a book by Oniki Levha. It's in Turkish. There isn't much in Turkish for Turkish audience, so I wrote it in Turkish exceptionally. So the ICC has actually indicted about 50 people, a little more than 50 people. About 32 cases, the cases are complete. 9 people were found guilty. 4 people were found not guilty. Then 7 people the charges were dropped. In 4 charges were withdrawn. These are different processes. And then 8 people died during the process, and there are 5 sort of present cases of ongoing proceedings, plus 15 people, including one president, which is Putin, currently being tried by the court. But look at the numbers. It's 50 people since 22 years. And we are having all these conflicts all over.
Yeah.
So this shows the workload of the ICC. It's not much because the court isn't as big as people think it is. So the crucial thing is, Israeli government declared that no wrong has been done by Netanyahu and Gallant. So instead of using a potential prosecution of these leaders as an admissibility challenge to try them in Israel, they declared that they are not going to. So what is left for the ICC to do? It has to examine. It has to continue with the case. But perhaps, I don't know, I took too much. Perhaps we can actually talk a little bit about the ICJ case, because there are also interesting developments there.
Yes, this is of course another part of this debate, that ICJ is another one to talk about, another subject to talk about. What would you like to say, Mr. Brunner? Let's start with
the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, we all know, that there are those proceedings between South Africa and Israel concerning the application of the Genocide Convention of 1948 in the ICC. I mean, I think, Kerem, I think you already went onto the topic in your last discourse here, right?
But there has been a lot after that.
Yeah,
So,
but there has been a lot afterwards. So basically, just to remind people, this is of course, South Africa does not have jurisdiction. South Africa is not in a straight classical dispute with Israel. However, ever since the case between the Gambia on the one hand and Myanmar on the other hand, the International Court of Justice accepted that in cases of genocide, basically, to make it short, all states can ask the International Criminal Court and file cases in other countries when they believe that states do not adhere to their obligations under the Genocide Convention, basically, and this is what South Africa did against Israel. So this is basically
And I would like to, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to ask you, as we discussed this subject with Mr. Gülay before, that potentially Türkiye, Ireland was another country, and please remind me which one. I think there was potentially
Jordan announced, Nicaragua already intervened, but ever since we talked, 2 countries openly intervened. Mexico filed it. So this is not a declaration of intention like Turkey did. This is Mexico, in fact, intervened before the ICJ.
But on the other hand, they recognized, Spain, Ireland, and Norway.
That's a separate issue.
Palestine as well.
That's a separate issue. So several countries recognized Palestine as a state. But there are other countries who intervene in the case against Israel by South Africa as third parties. So Mexico just intervened, and I think yesterday or the day before, Palestine itself recognized the jurisdiction of the court, the situation of, and then Palestine also intervened.
It was on 31st of May on one day, both actions.
The most interesting thing.
Would that recognition, state recognition, affect this ICJ as well or not, you think? This was my question. Actually, you can continue now. Sorry about that.
Do you want to answer that question, Manu?
I mean, this goes all. This is a topic that is also again very complex. I mean, to the majority view in international law, application, the recognition of a state does not make a state. This is the idea. It's a pure political act that might be motivated for what reason soever. So this is the majority view on international law. Like if you are recognizing a given entity, a given political entity, this does not make it a state. We have those basic criteria for statehood, like that is like a population, that is an effective government and a territory. But the effective and also sovereignty, and sovereignty in case of Palestine is very problematic because of the peace agreements in the late 1990s, early 2000 years. Considerable parts of the West Bank are under Israeli control, and Israel has numerous competences with regard to the Palestinian territories. So, on the other hand, the Palestinians, they enjoy the right to self-determination according to the General Assembly of the United Nations, and they can form a state. So this is a very, very complex issue. This issue also, at least in my view, Kerem, you can correct me, if you think I'm wrong, but this affects those actions by Israel, because under the ICJ statute, by Palestine, under the ICJ statute, those actions can only be done basically by a state. And
that's the interesting part.
Yeah, this is the interesting part. And now we have to see how the ICJ and the international community treats this, because we had the same debate in the ICC. The entity known as State of Palestine is a member state to the ICC statute. And however, this as I just briefly summarized, the statehood of the State of Palestine can very well be challenged according to international law. And I think the majority view is in international lawyers that the entity known as State of Palestine is not a state yet under international law. So what did the ICC do? Thus, the pre-trial chamber had to deal with that issue, and they basically said, we know it is problematic whether the entity known as State of Palestine is actually a state. But when they filed their application for membership, for becoming a state party to the ICC statute,
no one objected.
Nobody objected. No, the state could, any state of the every member state of the every state party could have objected this and could have said, yeah, but Palestinian statehood is debatable or non-existent. So we objected, and this is actually from a legal point of view, like this is a fair argument that you say, okay, you have a situation, and the situation is legally not entirely clear, but hey, and we have to deal with the situation. So nobody objected, so everybody sees no problem in this, basically. And so then ICC does, and we will see what is now happening with regard to the statute of the International Court of Justice, because this, of course, is a little bit older, very much older, and it works different. Kerem?
Yeah. So it's essentially the absence of objection at the ICC resulted Palestine to become a state party. I don't expect this to be the case for the ICJ case, and here is why. ICJ statute is clear about only states can become parties to the ICJ statute, and ICJ, since statehood is a very complex matter and it has factual and legal components, ICJ consistently in its case law avoided making a clear determination of statehood. For example, in the Kosovo advisory opinion, ICJ never actually said Kosovo is a state or not. It remained silent and just focused on a very narrow question. But this time, ICJ must make a determination, even absent proper explanation, and here is why. To file an intervention, you have to be a state. So if the ICJ accepts the intervention of Palestine, then the ICJ implicitly accepts Palestine as a state. This will be massive, regardless of the outcome of the case, because then the ICJ will be saying Palestine is a state. So the reaction or non-reaction has enormous consequences for Palestine. Second, if the ICJ rejects Palestinian intervention, Israel will be challenging this. Then the ICJ will be saying Palestine is not a state. But this is politically a very difficult choice for the ICJ, as ICJ historically never said something is not a state, because it will be actually undermining its own authority. So I think ICJ will go about, not about the intervention, but I think it will try to invoke the compulsory jurisdiction with respect to declaration. So it's a very technical issue, but regardless, this is very interesting legally. There is another aspect, which is Palestine is advancing two arguments, both on Article 62 and Article 63. So it's claiming that the interpretation of Genocide Convention concerns itself, and then it is also claiming that it has a direct right in the interpretation of so in this matter. So this will be a jurisprudential moment for the ICJ, not only because of the importance of the matter, but because of the legal complexities. But again, Mexico also filed an intervention. Mind that Mexico has chosen a new president who is Jewish, who's pro-Palestine. So they filed this case, this intervention request. And then what's new on the Turkey front, as far as we know, nothing. So this is while we are still thinking and contemplating whether how is it going to be? Is it Article 63, whatever? We haven't done anything yet. But to be fair, so did Jordan. Jordan didn't file something yet. So did Ireland. But Ireland is working on a very complex intervention because they are arguing for a new interpretation of the Genocide Convention. So their sort of work needs more effort. So that's basically it. And also we must say that the ICJ has new provisional orders, and there is a discussion whether a comma in that provisional order is categorically banning Israel from entering into Rafah area or not. The majority view on this is that because of the wording, while it's a little bit ambiguous, because of the wording, Israel cannot go into Gaza. It's in direct violation of the provisional order, which is Rafah. Sorry,
Rafah.
not so Rafah. If this is true, then I bet the violation of the provisional order would not sit well with the court in the final judgment. I think this extremely aggressive action is simply increasing the likelihood for the ICJ to find a violation of the Genocide Convention, simply because there is no restraint. That's my view.
Yes, so we're coming to an end now, but I want to ask you two more questions. One was about, actually, you mentioned it, Mr. Gülay, but I want you a little bit detail about that. After ICC prosecutors state saying that Netanyahu and Haniyeh that we request for arrest warrant, how will Turkey approach? Because there are how do you say, this is very fragile for Turkey as well. One, we will deal with Hamas because we don't recognize them as a terrorist organization, and we even host them as it happened a month ago or more than a month ago. I don't remember the exact time. But on the other hand, Netanyahu's situation, that Erdogan was clear on that situation now, that his acts are inhumane, that sort of thing. So what will happen next from Turkey's stance? And also I have another question for Brunner, Mr. Brunner, that US now trying to convince Netanyahu stop at least attacking Rafah on this side, because as you all explained the situation now, how will that affect the process? I mean, with the considering the attacks are still ongoing in Rafah, and how would it be seen internationally, I would say. So first I will give the word for Mr. Gülay, and then you can continue.
Okay, I'll be very quick because we haven't discussed this with Manuel, and I'm actually very curious about his thoughts about the U.S.-sponsored ceasefire issue. So I cannot answer how Turkey would act because this is a political issue. But I can tell how Turkey should act on this matter. Much like we said for states, whether something is a terrorist organization or someone is a terrorist or not, it's not a matter of recognition. Turkey doesn't indeed recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. That is very recent, by the way. I think in 20 years ago it would have. But Turkey is a party to, I think, almost every single United Nations terrorism conventions. And those terrorism conventions provide for definitions of terrorist acts. Hamas conducts all of those acts, specifically terrorism bombing conventions and the terrorism financing convention, which is also endorsed, passed through a resolution by the United Nations Security Council, so which is the law as much as it goes. Under that law, Hamas, any examination of Hamas, what their acts or are objectively terrorist acts, regardless of what they engage with, regardless of their noble cause for whether or not they are actually for Palestine or whether or not they are there for themselves or whatever. So Turkey should act accordingly. Not acting in accordance with these obligations may have serious consequences for Turkey. For example, individuals sending money to Hamas can be sanctioned through a very complex UN sanctions regime. Their bank accounts can be frozen. Is it likely? Maybe, it's a long shot, but it is possible. Because this is a terrorist organization. Many members in this organization are in terrorism watch lists, and it's regardless of whether or not any country recognizes them, their acts are terrorist acts. They fit to every legal definition of terrorism there is. So if Turkey doesn't act in accordance with that, or perhaps extradite these individuals, I think I'll see this biting Turkey later on. And it's not going to be a pleasant sight, but that's where I stop because there are more things to discuss about this, which we won't get out of it. So
yeah, talking about Biden's peace proposal, basically, it shows for me, before I start answering your question, it shows again one thing, and this is like that the Americans, U.S. Americans are still the dominant external actor in the Middle East. I mean, yes. the Germans always want to be, but actually, to be frank, nobody in the Middle East want to talk to the Germans because they traditionally play not a role there. I mean, our foreign minister, she was trying, but nobody wants to talk to the Germans. They want to talk with the Americans, basically, because the Americans traditionally have this huge influence there. So this peace proposal is I mean, we saw in this conflict since it started. We see of course, as we have always done in such conflicts, positioned by the United States administration that is very pro-Israel. However, we have also seen that the US, looking upon the high casualty rate and all the suffering happening in Gaza, is willing to take steps back. And that, for instance, in the United Nations Security Council, they abstained from voting and not used their veto when the Security Council, so the organ within the United Nations that is competent for international peace and security, asked for a ceasefire in the conflict, and this was a huge act. So basically, what I think about it will not lead instantly to a ceasefire. period. This not, but it increases the pressure upon it increases pressure upon the Israeli government in its policies and actions in Gaza, because they see that the the strong connection they enjoyed with America are to a degree dwindling, and they must at least do something to satisfy the Americans, and this must be some kind of humanitarian policy, humanitarian action towards the people of Gaza. When they are not willing to stop the military operations and come to a deal with Hamas concerning the current conflict, then they must at least give the Americans something, and this must be something that sits well with the U.S. American mind and the American population also, because in the U.S., of course, we see, as we see also in Germany, these protest camps. These are one thing, but there are also serious concerns in general population about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and I think the Israeli government must give something humanitarian in order to satisfy the Americans, and also to say, okay, we see what you are doing and we are willing to react upon it. I think there cannot be a non-reaction and just say, okay, that's a peace proposal, and then let it be, we will do our offensive anyway. I cannot say what it is basically, but I think this is likely.
Okay, may I have your last words before we close this debate?
Who goes first?
You. I spoke last.
Okay. So the situation is, in many respects, is getting more and more complex and intricate every day. So this is, of course, when we are talking about so much death toll, not just the death toll, but there are. I think I saw a report, maybe about 6,000 Israeli soldiers are permanently disabled now, and then 15,000 or something are wounded on the Gaza civilian front. There are more than 100,000 wounded. So we tend to talk about the dead, but not the wounded. There are so many orphan children. There are the hunger is striking. So there are malnutrition. It's horrible. So in all this horror, I think people might think that there is no time for intricate legal debate or the intricacy of diplomacy, but this is precisely the time of those things.
Yes.
It is the lawyer's job to tell the policymaker that such and such is unwarranted, unacceptable behavior. It has consequences. And then it's the job of diplomat to make deals which can actually survive the big egos of Netanyahu or the incompetencies of Biden administration diplomats, and many others. I for some reason I think we are failing on that front, and here is why. The argument both Manuel and myself made in the beginning. This thing turned into a debate of identity, a clash of identities. Not just East and West, not just left or right. This became, everyone has a very strong sort of identity, sort of evil versus good. This is blue. You don't solve problems like that. If you, on one hand, yes, one only makes peace with one's enemies, but on the other hand, it's less likely to reach a solution to the crisis if everyone is a demon or an angel. People must sit together on a table, not like children, but as adults, and start negotiating a deal, not passing each other various deals which are made in the back doors. And all these countries are claiming to be democracies. If that's the case, then why are these intricate deals not made before public? Because if they are made in secret, then people have more incentive to continue. So I think that's my angle, and that's it. And
Mr.
would
Brunner?
be happy to hear from Manuel.
Yeah, so my final thoughts about it is that they are very brief, very short, and this is that some things that Kerem already said, but I would like to remind everyone listening that certain acts under international law are simply unacceptable. They are unacceptable, and like murder, rape, willful torture, willful mutilation, and all that stuff. This is unacceptable on the one hand. And on the other hand, we must also, in international law, it is not that the end justifies the means. And it is about that you have a title to military action does not give you unlimited means and methods of warfare. Yeah. And so it is high time for the policymakers in such complicated conflicts actually to take advice, and not only the one directly involved, but also the other ones, to directly take advice from those who know about international law, and not come out with statements that make the situation worse on which front soever. That would be my final thought on that.
Well, thank you. I think enough said from your angles and your point of views. Thank you very much for joining me today. I think we had an important debate for sure, and hopefully it's your insights would enlighten our audience as well. And thank you for sparing your time with me. I know you're both very busy, but thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, yes, I think when you see from different aspects and different angles, the only thing coming up from this discussion is the humanitarian side of this war is now happening. This war should be the first place prior for everyone, for policymakers, for law experts, for ICC, for ICJ. So everyone should consider from this angle, I think. Well, we had an important talk today. We had an important discussion today. I will come up with another subject on Friday, 12:30. But till then, please do not forget to subscribe my YouTube channel, share your thoughts with me, and leave your comments. I read all of them, and I will definitely take it seriously. But till then, have a lovely week. Bye-bye.